All right, today we're going to dive into something that can honestly change the way you see your entire business. Activity-based costing, we'll call it ABC. And this is going to be a hands-on session, a practical guide to give you a much clearer lens on where your money is really going. So let me just start with a question. Are your business costs lying to you? I know, it sounds a little dramatic, right? But for so many businesses, the honest answer is, yeah, probably. You could be making huge decisions based on some seriously fuzzy math. And the real culprit, more often than not, is the traditional way of doing things. Those old school costing methods can give you a completely distorted picture. So today, we're going to peel back all those layers and find out the true cost of doing business. Now, this really gets to the heart of it. On the one hand, you've got what people call peanut butter costing. And it's a perfect name for it, right? You just take this big old glob of overhead costs, rent, utilities, all that stuff, and just smear it evenly across everything you sell. It's easy, sure, but it's rarely right. On the other hand, you've got ABC. Think of this less like a butter knife and more like a surgical laser, precisely assigning costs based on what's actually happening in your business. So how do we actually do this? Well, it breaks down into a pretty simple three-step process. And the very first step is all about identifying the core activities. To make this super clear, we're going to walk through an example from start to finish, a small batch coffee roaster. So first things first, what do we even mean by an activity? Well, it's basically any specific task that uses up your resources, your time, your money, your materials. It's the work that's happening behind the scenes. It's all the individual actions that come together to create your final product or service. And if we look at our coffee roaster, the work isn't just one big thing called making coffee. No, it's actually a whole series of separate activities. You've got the actual roasting of the beans, then the grinding, then packaging it all up, handling the customer orders that come in, and even the prep work, like setting up and cleaning the machines. Each one is its own distinct activity. Okay, so we've got our list of activities. The next logical question is, what does each of those things actually cost? So let's move on to step 2, which is all about tracing those costs. We call this traceable costing, and it's kind of like being a cost detective. You're taking those big general costs, like your monthly electricity bill or an employee's salary, and you're drawing a direct line from that cost to the specific activity that used it up. And this shows exactly how it works at our little roastery. The electricity needed for that huge roasting machine, boom, that cost is traced directly to the roasting the beans activity. The money spent on coffee bags, that goes right to packaging. And notice this part. Some costs, like the operator's salary, can be split. They spend time both roasting and setting up the machine, so their salary gets traced to both of those activities. This is where that precision starts to really pay off. All right, we're almost there. We've figured out what the work is, and we've connected our costs to that work. Now, for the final piece of the puzzle, we need to calculate something called the allocation rate. This is how we'll actually apply these costs to our products. The allocation rate, I know, it sounds a bit technical, but it's really simple. It's just the price tag for doing an activity one time. Think of it like the cost per hour of roasting, or the cost for every single customer order you handle. It's the final tool we need to assign these costs with pinpoint accuracy. And the formula to get there is super straightforward. You just take the total cost for an activity, like all the money spent on roasting, and you divide it by something called an activity driver. And a driver is just how you measure the activity. For roasting, the driver is probably hours. For packaging, it might be the number of bags. It's just how you count the work. So after our coffee roaster runs the numbers, they might discover something powerful. They might find that the true all-in cost of running their roaster is $50 for every single hour it's fired up. Now they have a real number. A coffee blend that takes 2 hours to roast is now correctly understood to be twice as expensive as a blend that only takes 1. And this is the aha moment. This is why we do all this work. Look at this. Using that old peanut butter method, both their simple house blend and their fancy, complex artisan blend looked like they cost $10 a bag to make. But after doing ABC, whoa, the real story comes out. The easy house blend actually only costs $8.50, but that artisan blend, with its extra setup time and longer roast, it's really costing them $13 a bag. They were unknowingly losing money on one product while probably overpricing the other. Okay, so let's zoom out. Let's connect all these dots to the big picture. Why on earth would you go through all this trouble? Well, because the result isn't just a better spreadsheet. It can literally transform your business.
And here it is again, the whole process in a nutshell. First, you identify the work being done. Second, you trace your costs to that work. And third, you use that information to allocate costs precisely to your products. It's a logical flow that takes you from total guesswork to total clarity. So what's the bottom line? ABC takes you from guesswork to clarity. Simple as that. When you know your real costs, you can set much smarter prices. You know which products are actually making you money, so you know where to focus your energy. This isn't just an accounting exercise, it's a direct path to higher profits. And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. If you were to apply this way of thinking to your own business, your own work, what hidden profit drivers, or maybe even what hidden money pits, do you think you could uncover?